Celeste could not sleep that night. It was very late and the room was dark and quiet. Miles was sleeping beside her and his breathing was slow and steady. That sound should have felt comforting because it was familiar and normal. Instead, it made her feel even more awake. Her chest felt heavy with a fear she could not name. It was like something bad was already in the room, even before she knew what it was. She turned toward the nightstand because she wanted some water. At that same moment, Miles's phone vibrated. The screen lit up the darkness in a sudden flash. Celeste did not plan to look at it. She did not want to look at it. She told herself that in that split second. But she was tired and tense and her eyes moved to the bright screen before she could stop herself. She saw a message. It said that he was a silky tiger. It praised him. It said he was missed already. It thanked him for 2 unforgettable nights. Celeste froze with her hand in the air. Her whole body went still. Then her heart started pounding so hard that she could hear it in her ears. 2 nights. He had just been away for 2 nights on a work trip in Houston for a leadership event. He was supposed to be busy in meetings and hotel conference rooms. She had stayed home and done all the normal things. She had made dinner. She had helped Mira with homework. She had lived what she thought was their ordinary life. Now one message tore a hole through all of it. The thought of Miles in a hotel room with another woman made her stomach turn. She felt sick. She stood up, but her legs were shaking. She stumbled to the bathroom because she needed air and space and something solid to hold on to. The bathroom tiles were cold under her feet, and that cold helped a little. She turned on the faucet and filled her hands with icy water. She splashed it on her face again and again as if she could shock herself awake and discover this was a nightmare. But she stayed awake. Nothing changed. She looked into the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her skin looked pale. Her eyes looked wild and terrified. Her mouth was open like she wanted to scream but could not remember how. She whispered to her own reflection that she had given 20 years of her life to this marriage. She did not know how long she stood there. Time felt broken. At some point she went back to bed. Miles had not moved. He looked peaceful and innocent and comfortable. He was curled up the same way he always slept. It was almost cruel how normal he looked. The room was the same. The house was the same. But inside her something had cracked open. It was not loud and it was not dramatic. It was quiet. But it was enough to change everything. The next morning sunlight filled the kitchen and made everything look too bright and too ordinary. Miles moved around like it was any other day. He drank coffee. He ate breakfast. He buttered toast. He rushed the way he always did when he was getting ready for work. He looked at Celeste and said she looked pale. He asked if she had not slept well. Celeste said yes and put his coffee in front of him. Then she told him she had a strange dream. In the dream, everything she believed in turned out to be a lie. Miles paused for a moment. It was very quick, but she saw it. Then he smiled and said dreams are strange. He said that they were real. He said he and Celeste were solid. Celeste smiled back because she was not ready to explode. She watched him kiss her cheek. She watched him pick up his briefcase and leave with the same easy confidence he always had. He walked out as if nothing had happened. As if the ground under their marriage had not already split. She stood in the kitchen with his empty plate in her hands and felt a strong urge to throw it against the wall. Her fingers twitched with anger. But she did not throw it. Instead, she put the plate down and reached for her phone. She called Tamsin. Tamsin was the one person Celeste thought she could trust. Celeste asked if they could meet for coffee because she needed to talk. Tamsin did not ask questions. She simply said yes and told her to come to their usual place in half an hour. The cafe smelled warm and sweet when Celeste arrived. It smelled like cinnamon and milk and comfort. Tamsin was already there in their favorite booth with a latte in front of her. She looked polished as always. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. She looked like the kind of woman who had everything under control. The moment Tamsin saw Celeste, she said Celeste looked awful. She sounded half joking and half worried. She asked what happened. Celeste did not ease into it. She blurted out that Miles was cheating. Tamsin blinked. Her fingers tapped nervously against her cup. She asked what made Celeste think that. Celeste did not answer with words. She held up the message. She showed the text she had seen on Miles's phone. Tamsin stared at it. For just a fraction of a second something moved across her face. Celeste could not fully name it at first. Then she could. It looked like guilt. It looked like fear. It looked like someone who already knew too much. Celeste said bitterly that Miles belonged to someone else now and she had been stupid enough to think their marriage was unbreakable. Tamsin looked away and said maybe it was not what it seemed. That sentence hit Celeste like another betrayal. She told Tamsin not to defend him. She told her not to soften what had happened. Tamsin went quiet. Then a cold thought slipped into Celeste's mind. It came fast and sharp. Why was Tamsin protecting Miles? Why did she seem nervous? Why was her voice too quick and too high? Celeste stood up. She said she was leaving. She said she would take the kids and go to her parents in Blue Ridge. Rowan would be home from college soon and Myra was still on a school trip. She said she would get them and she was done. Tamsin only nodded and stared into her coffee. She asked if Celeste was sure. She said it was a big decision. Celeste narrowed her eyes and asked if Tamsin thought she should stay. Should she pretend none of it happened? Tamsin hesitated. It was only a second, but it was enough. Celeste felt it. She asked whose side Tamsin was on. Tamsin answered too fast and said of course she was on Celeste's side. She added that she just did not want Celeste to do something she would regret. Celeste said she already regretted staying as long as she had. Then she left. Tamsin did not follow her. Later Celeste realized she had forgotten Myra's backpack. She had packed clothes and pajamas and the things they needed. But the school had sent home reading work that was due soon, and the books were in the front closet. She drove back to the house to get them. By then the sun had gone down and shadows stretched across the yard. The driveway was empty. Miles was not supposed to be home yet. Celeste told herself she only needed a short time. She would go in, grab the backpack, leave. Inside the house everything felt wrong. It looked the same but it no longer felt like hers. Even the air felt different. She moved quickly toward the closet. Then she heard the front door lock turn. Her blood went cold. Miles was early. She panicked and thought about sneaking out through the back door in the side yard. She did not want to face him. Not yet. Not while she was alone and shaking. Then she heard a voice. Miles spoke first and laughed lightly. He said not to be nervous. He said Celeste had no idea. Then a woman answered. The woman sounded worried. She said Celeste had seemed different that morning and maybe she knew something. Celeste stopped breathing. She knew that voice. It was Tamsin. The world seemed to tilt. Celeste backed against the kitchen wall and gripped the counter. Her throat tightened so hard she could barely breathe. Her best friend was in her house with her husband. Her best friend who had stood beside her at her wedding. Her best friend who was her daughter's godmother. The woman she trusted like family. Celeste heard them move through the foyer. She heard them laugh. She heard Miles talk about finally being alone. She heard Tamsin let out a soft breath like she was relieved. Then she heard them start up the stairs. They were going to Celeste's bedroom. Each step they took felt like a slap. Celeste remembered how she once loved the sound of that staircase. In younger years Miles had carried her up those stairs and kissed her and made promises. Now the same stairs were carrying him and Tamsin to betray her in the most intimate place in the house. Celeste did not fully know what made her move. But suddenly she was climbing the stairs behind them. Her knees shook. Her hands slid along the banister, because she felt unsteady. The bedroom door was partly open and warm light spilled into the hall. She could hear their voices and their laughter. She took a deep breath. She pushed the door open and turned on the light. The room came into sharp focus. Miles stood there with his shirt half open and his hair messy. Tamsin stood near the bed with tangled hair and a pale face. Both of them looked shocked. Miles immediately said it was not what it looked like. Celeste felt a calm that was colder than anger. She asked him if he was serious. Because to her it looked exactly like her husband and her best friend were about to have sex in her bed. Tamsin opened her mouth but no words came. Miles started trying to speak again but Celeste cut him off. She told him not to try. She did not want excuses. He looked hurt. That almost made her laugh because he was the one causing the wound. Celeste told them that they could have chosen any bed in the city, and yet they chose hers. She said they really leaned into the symbolism. Her voice was controlled and sharp. Inside she was falling apart. It felt like her whole body was vibrating, but somehow she stayed steady on the outside. Tamsin tried to say Celeste's name. Celeste snapped at her and said she did not get to say that name anymore. Not then. She asked Tamsin if all those years of calling Miles a dream husband and their marriage perfect had been part of some game. Tamsin looked broken and speechless. Celeste whispered that she already knew enough and did not want answers. Miles stepped toward her and she held up a hand and told him not to come closer. She said she did not care about his explanation. She said she had the messages now. She mocked the names they used. She said she had packed and was taking the kids. She told them to enjoy each other. Then she left the room. Miles called after her but she did not stop. She carried her suitcase downstairs and past old family photos and mirrors and little pieces of the life they had built. It all felt like evidence from another person's story. Miles followed her to the door and pleaded. He said this was not what she thought. Celeste told him it was exactly what she thought. He reached for her arm and said he loved her. Celeste turned and answered with icy calm. She told him it was too bad he forgot to tell his tigress. Then she walked out into the night. She drove without really remembering the first part of the drive. The highway blurred beneath her. Her hands gripped the wheel so hard her knuckles went white. The car felt thick with memories and pain. She kept seeing flashes from their life together. Their wedding. Their children growing up. Happy moments that now felt poisoned. Then a low fuel light came on. Even that felt like a cruel joke. She took the next exit and found a gas station that looked almost unreal in the harsh lights. It was quiet and nearly empty. Celeste got out and tried to focus on simple tasks. Card. Pump. Fuel. Breathe. She did not notice at first that she was crying. A man behind the counter spoke to her. He said it looked like a rough night. Celeste asked why he would say that. He calmly said most people do not cry while filling their tank. She touched her face and realized her cheeks were wet. She apologized out of habit. He told her there was no need and said everyone has bad days. Then he offered her coffee on the house. Celeste hesitated. Part of her wanted to disappear. But his tone was not nosy and not pitying. It was just gentle and steady. So she accepted. He poured the coffee and introduced himself as Jude. He joked that he was the owner and cashier and midnight philosopher. Celeste managed a weak smile and told him her name. They sat at a tiny table in the corner surrounded by dusty maps and snacks. The heater hummed softly. The place felt oddly safe. Celeste said she had not planned to tell anyone what happened. Then she corrected herself because she also had not planned on discovering her husband was sleeping with her best friend. Jude did not interrupt. He did not push. He simply listened. So she told him everything. She told him about the message on the phone. She told him about hearing voices in the house. She told him about following them upstairs. She told him about catching them in her bedroom. She told him about 20 years of marriage and the friend she trusted with all the important parts of her life. She said she had believed she and Miles were solid. She said he used to hold her hand and make her feel safe. She said Tamsin had been there for every milestone. Wedding. Children. Hard times. Good times. Jude listened and then quietly said that sometimes the people closest to us carry the sharpest knives. The sentence startled her because it felt true in a way she did not want. She told him he did not sound surprised. Jude said he was not. He shared a little of his own history. He said his wife died years earlier in a car accident. After her death, some friends disappeared and others came back with painful truths. Loss had taught him things he never wanted to learn. Celeste told him she was sorry. He nodded and said that was part of why he kept the gas station. It was quiet. Predictable. He could talk to strangers who passed through and left. No complicated ties. Celeste asked why he was talking to her. He shrugged and said maybe because she looked like someone who needed another person to sit with her while her world fell apart. Something in Celeste softened when he said that. The coffee in her hand had gone cold, but she no longer felt quite as frozen inside. Jude asked gently if she had children. Celeste said yes. 2. Rowan was in college and Myra was 13. She said they were everything to her. Jude smiled and said then she already had something worth starting over for. Celeste looked at him more carefully then. He was not glamorous. He had a graying beard and tired eyes. But he was kind and present. She did not feel instant romance. She felt something steadier. Something safe. She thanked him for the coffee and for treating her like a human being instead of a disaster. He raised his cup and made a dry toast to surviving betrayal and bad gas station lighting. Celeste laughed. The sound felt strange because she had not expected to laugh that night. But she held on to it. Before she left, they exchanged numbers. It was not a promise. It was only a possibility. Jude joked that she could call if she needed more caffeine and less judgment. Celeste drove on to Blue Ridge with the heater running and the windows cracked just a little. The mountain roads were dark and the trees blurred by. Somewhere ahead her parents' house waited. For that night that was enough. Her parents' house had not changed much. The porch still creaked in the same places. The air still smelled like pine and old wood. The house itself was familiar and steady, but Celeste felt like a different person walking into it. Her mother opened the door in a nightgown with her hair pinned back. She took one look at Celeste's suitcase and face and understood that something terrible had happened. She did not ask questions right away. She simply told Celeste she could sleep in the guest room and that she would make the bed. Celeste nodded and went inside. Mira was already there wrapped in a childhood blanket by the time Celeste came upstairs. Rowan had driven in early from college after hearing enough in Celeste's voice to know she needed him. He met her with a worried expression and a silent hug. Celeste said very little that night. The next morning her mother made blueberry pancakes and acted almost too normal. It felt like everyone was trying to pretend sweetness into the room. Later while Mira and Rowan were outside with their grandfather, her mother said she had invited Miles to come over. Celeste put down her fork and stared at her. Her mother repeated it calmly and said Miles was still her husband and they needed to talk. Celeste said no. Not then. Not there. Her mother folded her napkin carefully and spoke in the voice she used when she thought she was teaching wisdom. She said men stray now and then and that did not mean you destroy a whole marriage. Celeste was stunned. She asked if her mother really thought this was just one small mistake. She said Miles had been sleeping with her best friend. Her mother did not react the way Celeste hoped. She only said it was still Celeste's marriage. Celeste asked what that was supposed to mean. Was she supposed to stay and swallow betrayal for the sake of appearances? Her mother said Celeste should fight for the marriage. Celeste pushed back her chair and stood. She said she had been fighting for that marriage for 20 years and she was not doing another round. Her mother sighed with disappointment and did not argue more. The silence between them was heavy. Later that day, Celeste sat in the garden with Mira while the girl drew flowers. Mira was pretending not to listen, but children always hear more than adults think. In a small voice, Mira asked whether her father was still coming back. Celeste answered gently that he would not be coming back in the same way. Mira nodded and kept drawing. That night, Celeste filled out divorce papers. The court date came sooner than she expected. On the day of the hearing, the city was cold and gray. Celeste wore a navy suit she had not touched in years. Her shoes pinched and her chest hurt worse. Miles was already there at the courthouse and he looked drained. He looked like a man who had lost his polish and was now living with the consequences of what he had done. They sat across from each other and said almost nothing while lawyers moved through details and numbers. It felt cold and mechanical, as if they were dividing office equipment instead of ending a family life built over decades. Then something unexpected happened. When it was time to review the division of assets, Miles interrupted and said he wanted to make a statement. He stood and said he gave up any claim to shared property. He said everything should go to Celeste and the children. The house, the car, the accounts, all of it. People in the room reacted with surprise. Even the judge looked taken aback and asked if he understood what he was saying. He said yes. Celeste did not feel gratitude. She felt confusion. Was this guilt? Was it performance? Was it his final attempt to control the narrative? She could not tell. Then she saw Tamsin sitting in the back of the courtroom. Tamsin looked thin and pale and haunted. Her eyes were empty in a way that looked deeper than simple sleeplessness. Celeste turned back to Miles and noticed that he did not look at Tamsin even once. Something had changed between them. Celeste did not know the full story, but she could feel the distance. When the hearing ended, Celeste walked past Miles without speaking. She did not owe him words anymore. Outside in the cold, she felt the sharp air on her face and it felt almost cleansing. She did not cry. She did not turn around. She kept walking. After the divorce, Celeste moved with the children into a townhouse. The place smelled like fresh paint and cardboard and possibility. Most boxes were still sealed, but for the first time in months, the space around her felt like it belonged to her. Rowan carried in boxes and joked about where to put kitchen things. Mira ran in behind him, holding a painting she wanted to hang in the living room. It was bright and abstract and full of reds and golds and deep blue. It looked chaotic but hopeful. Celeste told her it was perfect. One night after the children were asleep, Celeste opened one of the last boxes from the old house. It was full of old papers and photos and forgotten objects. At the very bottom, she found a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The handwriting on the envelopes was Tamsin's. Celeste's hands went cold. Each letter was addressed to Miles and dated from a year before Celeste and Miles met. Celeste opened one. It was a love letter. Then another. And another. Tamsin wrote that she missed him. She asked why he would not write back. She begged him to tell her if he had moved on. These were not casual notes. They were raw and young and full of pain. Then Celeste found a photograph in the last envelope. It showed Tamsin and Miles as teenagers or very young adults. They stood close together and smiled like people deeply in love. Celeste sat on the floor and tried to breathe. Miles and Tamsin had known each other long before Celeste came into the picture. No one had ever told her. She felt a new kind of shock. It did not erase the betrayal. It complicated it. It made the whole story older and stranger and sadder. The next morning she drove to Miles's mother, because she thought maybe the older woman knew the missing pieces. Miles's mother welcomed her in with surprise. The house looked exactly the same as always, with polished furniture and floral wallpaper and familiar teacups. Celeste did not waste time. She asked if Miles's mother knew about Tamsin and Miles from before college. The older woman tightened her mouth and said that was a long time ago. Celeste pressed. She said it happened and she had found letters. Miles's mother explained that Miles and Tamsin had been neighbors and very close when they were young. She said after the families moved, Miles wrote to Tamsin for months, but never got a reply. Celeste said that could not be true because she had found dozens of letters from Tamsin to Miles. Miles's mother looked confused and said Miles really did write every week and they had checked the mailbox together. Then something clicked in Celeste's mind. She asked who else had lived in the house at that time. Miles's mother said her own mother had lived with them then. Celeste pulled out a final letter she had found. This one was not from Tamsin. It was from Tamsin's grandmother, and it explained everything. The grandmother had intercepted letters. She had decided Tamsin did not need that relationship and wanted her to move on. She made sure both young people believed they had been abandoned. Miles's mother read the letter, and her hands shook. She whispered in shock that they had never known. Celeste said no, they had not. When Celeste got home, she sat outside with her phone for a long time. Then she called Miles. He answered on the second ring. Celeste told him she had found the letters and the truth. She said he and Tamsin had spent years believing they were abandoned when in reality someone had made sure they never heard from each other. There was silence. Miles finally exhaled and said it had been real then. Celeste said yes. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not explain. He only thanked her for telling him and ended the call. Celeste sat there staring at the trees and wondered what all of it meant. Was she only a replacement for an old lost love? Maybe at first, maybe not. She could not know. She didn't know that what she and Miles built had once felt real. But real things can still end. Not long after that, Tamsin came to Celeste's store. Tamsin looked stripped down and exhausted. No polished makeup. No careful styling. She looked older not because of time but because of regret. She stood there like someone who no longer knew how to pretend. Celeste opened the door before Tamsin could knock. Tamsin said she needed to talk. Celeste said she did not. But something in Tamsin's voice made Celeste pause. It was not manipulation. It was exhaustion. The kind that comes when someone can no longer hide from what they have done. Celeste let her in. They sat in the small kitchen across from each other with a table between them that felt like a boundary line. Celeste did not offer coffee. She did not offer comfort. She offered silence. Tamsin began by saying she loved Miles. She said she had loved him before Celeste even met him. Celeste said she knew. Tamsin said he had been her first love and first everything. Then he moved away and she never heard from him again. Celeste told her she now knew why. She explained that the letters had been intercepted and that neither of them had abandoned the other. Tamsin's eyes widened in shock when she realized Celeste knew the truth. Celeste said she had found all the letters. Tamsin looked shattered. She said she thought Miles had forgotten her and replaced her. Then in college she met Celeste and discovered Celeste was with Miles. Tamsin claimed she told herself she was over him. But she admitted she was not. Then she confessed something even more painful. She said at first she became friends with Celeste partly to stay close to Miles. Later she truly did grow to love Celeste as a friend and as family. That part she insisted was real. Celeste answered that Tamsin still slept with him. Tamsin said it was not planned. She said it happened a few months earlier after a company holiday party and too much drinking. She started to describe the moment and Celeste cut her off. Celeste did not want blurry excuses or details. Tamsin said she was not trying to justify it. She only wanted Celeste to know it had not been going on for years. It was not a secret affair spanning the whole marriage. Celeste asked if that was supposed to make it better. Tamsin said no. She said in a way it made it worse because both of them knew better and did it anyway. Celeste stood with her arms crossed and asked whether Miles had promised Tamsin he would leave Celeste. Tamsin hesitated. That told Celeste enough. Celeste pushed and asked if Miles had said he loved Tamsin. Tamsin whispered yes. She said after Celeste left he came to her and said he did not know what he wanted. Celeste said Tamsin had mistaken confusion for love because she had spent years holding on to a memory. Tamsin argued that this was not fair. Celeste snapped back that fairness had already died. She said she knew exactly what it felt like to hold on to someone who stopped choosing you when you were no longer convenient. Tamsin looked away and bit her lip to stop herself from crying. For a moment Celeste almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Tamsin said she had always imagined that if she and Miles ever got another chance it would feel like coming home. But when it happened it felt wrong. It felt like both of them were pretending they were still the people they used to be. Celeste told her that they had changed. Miles had changed. Tamsin had changed. Tamsin nodded and said she was moving to Seattle for a job. She said she needed to leave because everything around her reminded her of what she ruined. When Tamsin left there was no hug and no dramatic farewell. Celeste did not cry. But she felt something close at last. A door that had been hanging open too long finally shut. That night Celeste's mother came over. Her mother stood in the kitchen and looked at Celeste with a different expression than before. She seemed less certain and more reflective. She said Celeste really had gone through with the divorce. Celeste answered that she already had. Her mother took a breath and admitted she had been wrong. She said she had always preached about keeping a family together and forgiving no matter what. But she had come to see that staying can sometimes erase a person instead of making her strong. She told Celeste she was proud of her for not letting other people decide her worth. Celeste did not know what to say. She just nodded. After her mother left, Celeste texted Jude and asked if he wanted dinner that weekend. She added that it would be just the two of them and no ghosts. Jude replied quickly that he would bring wine and she could bring the stories. For the first time in a long while Celeste looked forward to something. Spring came quietly that year. It was not dramatic. It came in softer evenings and warmer breezes and the sense that life was moving again. Celeste had been living in her new place for months by then. The townhouse was not large, but it was hers. The creaks and smells and little flaws belonged to a life she was building herself. There were mornings when she woke up and for one brief second forgot everything that had happened. At first those moments made her sad. Later they began to feel like healing. One Saturday Jude arrived carrying groceries and a bottle of red wine. He did not make a show of helping. He just stepped into the kitchen and started cooking as if being there with her was simple and natural. He held up a strange-looking garlic bulb and joked that it might be a small meteor. Celeste laughed and said it depended on how much he planned to use. They made a simple meal. Pasta and bread and wine. They talked for hours. Some of the conversation moved through old pain. Some of it moved toward new possibilities. Nothing felt forced. After dinner, they sat on the back porch and watched the evening sky darken. Jude asked if Celeste ever thought about what she would say to herself from a year earlier. Celeste thought for a while and then said she would tell that earlier version of herself that the house would become emptier, but her heart would not stay empty. She would tell her it is possible to mourn something deeply even when you are the one who chooses to leave. Jude nodded and said he told himself that grief is not the end of the road. It is a bend in it. They did not kiss that night. They did not need to. There was something deeply respectful in the slowness between them. Celeste was learning that love did not always arrive with noise and fireworks. Sometimes it arrived as patience. As shared silence. As someone who knew how to sit beside your pain without trying to fix it too quickly. In the weeks that followed, life continued to reshape itself in small and meaningful ways. Mira painted a mural on her bedroom wall with blues and golds and soft whites. She called it her mother's fresh start. Celeste let her paint because the room was part of a new chapter, and she wanted Mira to leave her mark on it. Rowan came home for the summer and surprised Celeste by bringing a young woman named Kat. Kat was quiet and kind and looked at Rowan with a thoughtful tenderness that made Celeste trust her right away. Even Celeste's parents were changing. Her mother, who once believed endurance was the highest form of womanhood, joined a volunteer group that worked with local shelters. Her father drove her there several times each week and started writing poetry. The poems were not very good, but they were sincere and new, and that mattered. Then one day Miles called. He quickly said he was not calling to repair anything. He only wanted to say he was sorry. Not just for the affair, but for all the years he had left Celeste alone inside the marriage in ways she did not fully see until later. Celeste did not say much. But she listened. When she ended the call, she did not feel rage. She felt a dull ache like touching an old scar. It hurt a little, but it was no longer an open wound. Later that week, she found herself back at the same gas station where she first met Jude. The sky was gray, and the pumps were still stubborn and imperfect. Inside the little store, the corner table had potted plants around it now and travel mugs for sale. The place looked more lived in. Jude looked up from behind the counter and smiled when he saw her. He told her she had never finished telling him the rest of her story. Celeste smiled and said that was because she was still writing it. This time they sat side by side instead of across from each other. There was no urgent need to run from the past, and no pressure to define the future. There were just two people present in the same moment. For the first time in a very long time, Celeste was not bracing herself for the next betrayal. She was not waiting for another shoe to drop. She was not scanning every kindness for hidden danger. She was simply there. Alive. Changed. Wiser. Still tender in places, but no longer broken in the same way. The fire she walked through had not destroyed her. It had remade her. And at last she could breathe without fear.